you don't matter, feel like your life doesn't matter, get involved. You can't tell me Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Nelson Mandela, Gloria Steinem, Anita Hill, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Malala Yousafzai, Greta Thunberg. Tell me one person can't make a difference. I don't care about your politics. I care about your kids. I care about decency and humanity and kindness. Kindness today is an act of rebellion. There are people that don't have what you have. Help them get it. There is a planet that needs help. It feels good to help. It feels powerful to help. Stop fighting each other and help each other. Get together with your friends and change the f***ing world. Thank you.
So it's an honor. I'm just really introducing Marius to everybody and let Marius talk to you and let him share his journey with and the battles, the similar battles that he's had and he's won. If we can maybe take into account everything that he's going to share with us to help us on our journey. So follow Marius.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, that's good. Well, thank you first of all for inviting me. I'm very honored to be here. I live in a country called Norway, approximately the same population as New Zealand, 5 million. It's about 20,000 kilometers from here, so it's been a long flight. But I'm really honored to be here to share some of my thoughts about what's going on in Norway with you, because I think that we are experiencing a lot of the same things in Norway as you are doing here. As I told, we are 5 million people and we have several indigenous groups in Norway as well. And for decades, these groups have been persecuted by the government. I mean, these groups, the children have been taken away for no good reasons at all. And in Norway, we have this multi-billion industry where the government is actually taking children from well-working families, either because they're from indigenous groups or because of some other stupid reasons, and put this into a multi-billion industry. And I understand from talking with the Families for Justice who invited me here that you are struggling with the same problems here. And I work as a human rights counsel, and my job is actually to fight my own government every day. It's not the most secure job you have because you are hated by the government, but in a way, after a while, you get to like it. I mean, I've been doing this for like 15 years, and I am very privileged to be able to fight for justice, because I think that's one of the most important things we can do in our society, to work for equal rights for everyone. And that's why I think this has to be a global movement. And, you know, by coming here to New Zealand, and the people in Norway will watch this from online by this presentation being streamed, this will also benefit the people in Norway to see that actually Human Rights Council for Norway is going all the way to New Zealand, also to tell about that atrocities or human rights crimes are happening there. So my main purpose to come here is to try to inspire you to see that everything is possible if you cooperate and if you really believe in justice. Because it took me 10 years before I was able to convince the European Court of Human Rights to really believe that there were human rights crimes going on in Norway. And you know, Norway, like New Zealand, is supposed to be top-ranked countries in the world when it comes to welfare and these things according to UN statistics. But we all know that that is sort of like bullshit as well, because a lot of people don't have the voice to speak out, and these people are being oppressed. These people are being imposed with very serious human rights crimes. And I meet a lot of these people in Norway, you know. You meet people who are totally shattered by these crimes convicted by the Norwegian government. And they don't have a voice, and if they don't have a place to address these violations, I mean, they will obviously, we all will lose, because at the end, this is a global battle. And we were talking with my friend Steve, who's my co-partner here in New Zealand. And this is a global problem. You have to be aware of that. This is not only about New Zealand. It's not only about Norway. This is a problem called the judicial and governmental and executive elite against the people. And if we allow the elite to govern our lives without fighting back, well, we will not get any further. Rather the contrary, we will have several setbacks. So I was very happy to hear the speakers before me saying that we have to, we have to regain control. We have to take control of our own independence. I mean, a lot of you have been oppressed for hundreds of years, like they have been doing in Norway as well. And it took the Sami people, who are the indigenous people in Norway, it took them more than 100 years to establish their own government. Now they managed to do it, and that has helped them a lot to preserve their rights as an indigenous group in Norway. So I think it's definitely possible for you as well. And I think it's absolutely possible for you to combat the atrocities going on here when it comes to human rights crimes, because you have to believe in the Human Rights Act, because these acts are there for you, not for the government. And I'm aware that judiciary in New Zealand is very similar to what's going on in Norway, that the judges are making fun of those who are promoting human rights. But at the end, you will realize that sooner or later they have to start to comply with your rights, because it's your rights, not the government's rights. And in 2019 was the big breakthrough for the people of Norway. After fighting for so many years, we had 5 convictions in the European Court saying that Norway was violating the fundamental human rights, taking away children without any good reasons, and not returning them back to their families. And that was an international crisis for Norway, because Norway, like New Zealand, wants to portray itself to the rest of the world as human rights champions, whereas they're not. So by having these 5 judgments in the European Court of Human Rights, the people and not the government was right. Me personally, I've been bullied and threatened all my life for 10 years, since I've been trying to say to the government that you are actually violating the rights of the people. And of course, the elite has been laughing at me for a very long time, because the elite depends upon taking a number of children every year. Can you imagine in Norway, which is a country with the same population as New Zealand, or maybe a few 100,000 more, 5 children are being taken away from the family every day. And these children, they are being taken away because this is a multi-billion industry in Norway. So a lot of people, psychologists, lawyers, judges, social workers, investment groups, they benefit from the fact that you are taking away thousands of children each year. And I meet with these families who have lost their children, and of course they are devastated, they are traumatized, and exactly what you feel here in New Zealand as well. So you can feel, when Steve was talking to me about the problems here in New Zealand, I could feel that he was talking about Norway. So there is a very close link between what's happening here, or what's happening in the UK, what's happening in the United States, or what's happening in Norway, or other Scandinavian countries. So what's the solution for you to do something about this? I mean, gathering is obviously very important. What was the key to success in Norway, I think, was to start these Facebook groups 6-7 years ago, where people started to come forward with their stories. They were not afraid anymore. It was not connected with any shame, because they realized that, this family has experienced the same atrocities that my family. And more people came forward with their stories, and that started to build up a coalition against the government. And in 2015, a little more than 4 years ago, the European Court of Human Rights started to listen to us. And we had these numerous convictions in 2019, where Norway was condemned as one of the worst countries when it comes to child welfare policies, or the legal issues with children welfare. I do believe that every children should grow up in the safe surroundings. I think everyone in this world agrees with me on that. But the thing is that when you take children out of well-working families, you cause so much trauma not only to the child, as well as your costs to the biological family. So that's a major reason why we have to fight for the biological concept to be preserved and not being ripped apart like they've done in Scandinavian countries. So what can you learn from these experiences that I am bringing with me from Norway? Well, first of all, I think that obviously you're not a part of the European Court of Human Rights since you're not a part of Europe. But you are a part of the UN Committee or the United Nations Legal Committee in Geneva. I know that New Zealand signed a treaty, and that treaty imposes New Zealand to respect all the articles felt in that Convention on Social and Political Rights, and that's the #1 issue for you to be aware of. Because the UN Convention on Social and Political Rights are exactly similar to the European Convention on Human Rights, which Norway has been convicted for 5 times already, and most likely will be convicted for at least 5 more times this year. So by applying, at least considering to apply Article 17 of that convention, also in the domestic courts in New Zealand, you will force the judges to rely upon even the most basic human rights standards. And in Norway, the lawyers have now, after all these convictions, started to apply these Article 17 of the UN Charter. And that puts a lot of pressure upon the judges, because they cannot ignore it any longer. Because if they ignore it, they send a very clear signal to the international community as well, that we are ignoring these fundamental rights, even though we have been convicted in the European Court 5 times already, just in 2019. So there is a tremendous pressure on the judges in Norway now, so they can no longer ignore it, and that's what you should aim for here in New Zealand as well. You should aim for the fact that even the most fundamental rights are being protected by the government or the judges. There is obviously a judicial elite here in Australia, as it is in Norway, where the judges have tremendous power, and the parliamentarians, at least in Norway, they're afraid to intervene with the judges. So in Norway, it's like the judges are they're the kings, or the most powerful elite group. But these people are also human beings, and by imposing them to respect even the most fundamental standards, you will have a tremendous chance to succeed when it comes to keeping or trying to preserve your rights as an indigenous group against the mightyful government. So I was on the way here from Auckland this morning. We were talking about what to do, and I think one of the things you can do, if you manage to collaborate with other groups, and if you put the disagreements away and you focus on the main goal, which is to preserve fundamental human rights, is to bring on class actions in the UN Committee for human rights crime committed by New Zealand for decades or for generations. That's definitely, if you do that, that will not only bring awareness to Europe as well, and Europe has almost 1 billion people to be, and that will scrutinize the government of New Zealand in a way it has never been scrutinized before, because it tells to the international society that human rights crimes are being committed in New Zealand as well. Because what's one of the problems here in New Zealand, like it is in Norway? Well, we are relatively small countries in the outskirts of the world. My country is far up in the north. Nobody really cares. It's a little country. It's very cold. It's dark. And why should the rest of Europe? Why should the rest of Europe care too much about such a small country? Exactly the same here. I mean, it took me like 30 hours to get it by plane. So the thing is that we have to bring awareness about what's going on, and if you are not doing it yourself, nobody will help you. So my main focus is to encourage you to say that we have to stand up. I mean, this is a wonderful start, having visions for 2040 and 2030, but you have to bring these awareness to the international community, so more and more people are being thought about what's going on. Personally, I didn't know much about it. I thought New Zealand was one of the better places on earth myself, until I started to realize through my friends here that there are atrocities going on here as well. And then we started to share these opinions or this knowledge, and we saw that, you know what, we were facing the same fight, exactly the same fight. So if you go together and alert the UN committee that you are willing to bring on a class action lawsuit against the government of New Zealand, I think the UN committee will be very eager to look into that. I mean, it's only some weeks ago that New Zealand was convicted in the UN committee for torture. So you see, it's possible to bring these cases as long as you're dedicated and as long as you really want improvements. And you can say that it's an impossible task, it's going to take years and so on, but if you don't do anything, I mean, you can be sure that nothing will change to the better. So you better start as soon as possible. So my first idea was to say to you that at least consider this possibility to bring these human rights crimes that you are facing here to the Human Rights Committee through a class action lawsuit. The second option you have, which is also an option we are considering in Norway, is to bring these human rights crimes to the International Criminal Court in Hague in the Netherlands. And this International Criminal Court is something very different than the UN Committee because it deals with like human rights crimes against humanity. But I think that I spoke to this gentleman and he told me that we have been gathering evidence for years. And I truly believe that if you can gather evidence that you have been exposed for crimes against humanity or persecution against indigenous people, you will be able to present that also for the International Criminal Court, and that will raise a tremendous attention to New Zealand worldwide. So I think that can also be a possibility for you to really be aware that there are a lot of people out there who have a commitment for justice, and you just have to bring that attention to these people and believe that justice can happen. Because otherwise we're doomed to lose. So I'm very eager to see how that people here in New Zealand are bringing this fight forward. That was very inspirational for me to, you know, when the people in Norway will see this t-shirt, that will have a signal effect for the people in Norway too. So by collaborating, I mean, by just exchanging ideas, by meeting people who are committed to try to do a difference for the people, we can definitely do it. And you know, I've been persecuted by the Norwegian government for decades, and in a way, in the beginning you were afraid. I mean, for the consequences, of course, because being like a dissent of the society, it can be dangerous, so you can feel it's intimidating in a way. But personally, based on my own experience, I've had the best 10 years of my life doing this, traveling around, meeting awesome people throughout the world. Because that's something I really discovered, that of course, wherever you are in this world, we're quite similar. And one thing we share in common is the notion of justice. I mean, people cannot have peace with themselves if they don't fight, if they have been exposed for injustice. So I think that fighting for justice is one of the most important cases that human beings can do while we are here on this planet. So I can just encourage you to move on with this fight, to fight for your rights, as we told about your own constitution, your own parliament. They succeeded in Norway with that, so why shouldn't you? I mean, that should be something you should strive for. At least you should not accept at all this child welfare policy that takes children without good reasons. And so you have to bring this forward by bringing the strong people together and make justice come true. So and we did it in Norway. I mean, we're not finished yet. We have a long way to go, but at least we made it. We gave the people in Norway hope that it is still possible to gain some justice when injustice has been done. So I hope you will be inspired from that, and I wish you all the best. And I will be following this with a lot of interest, because this is like a win-win situation. That was also one of the reasons why I came here, because I thought that if I'm traveling all the way to New Zealand, that will give a very clear signal effect to the Norwegian government as well, that we are in this together, and we are definitely going to battle these injustices together, no matter where these human rights crimes are taking place. So I think I will leave the word there, but thank you very much. Keep up the good fight, and as a very prominent politician in Europe said, if you believe in justice, justice will believe in you. And I think that's a very good saying. So thank you very much for letting me speak a little bit here. Thank you.
Yes.